Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your hosts, U.S. Air Force veterans Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as they will bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your hosts, Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Frontline. It's a very, very unique day today because I am without my partner in crime, the one, the only Jay Johnson. As you can hear, it's silence. So Jay is out today because he has COVID for the second time. So Donna's going to do this on her own. Here I am. And we decided that we would decide to move forward without him because we have a lot of guests that we want to bring on to touch base with. So Jay, if you're listening, well wishes to you, my friend. Get better soon because I need my partner in crime back. So moving along, this week is crazy. My kids started school and my kids started school. Need I say more? So although I'm excited, we're still in the midst of getting things done like checklists and all the bookmarks and paper and pens and pencils and whatever else they need for school. We're still in the middle of getting all that stuff. So in another week or so, we'll hopefully be in the school routine. I'm kind of excited for that. So having said all that, let's talk about our next lineup in our entrepreneurship. There's many angles in startups and entrepreneurship, and we have businesses and we have franchises, and we've talked about a little of those. And we've brought on Gary Chernow, who does franchise recruiting. We've talked to people that have owned a franchise, and we've talked to people that have done startup and done it from the ground up. That's done organic business building. And there's one other angle that I'm always curious about, and that's the nonprofit world. You know, we have lots of nonprofits, and for the military people and all the veterans, there's something like over 40,000 nonprofits. Now, in the business world, we know that businesses last for, on average, a startup will last about 5 years, not great odds. And in the nonprofit world, it's actually worse than that. It's about a year. So when I see nonprofits, I'm really curious how they start and how they continue, the ones that are successful. In the past, you've probably heard one of our podcasts where we talked to Michelle Lang that has a startup called Veteran Help Point, and she's in the middle of growing hers right now. So now we're going to bring on somebody that actually has had a nonprofit for quite a number of years. He actually started this, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 2005. And he has had a very successful nonprofit. And his name is Wes Garnett with Operation Float a Soldier. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to have a discussion on what it takes to keep a nonprofit going successfully. So a little bit about Wes. He is a very seasoned young man, born in 1962 and originally here in San Antonio. He was a Navy boy for 4 years. He was a cryptological technician collector. He actually copied Morse code. I've actually talked to him, and he was like one of the masters of Morse code. He really could decipher it quicker than most people. They decided to get out, and he kind of bounced around a little bit in jobs. Then he decided to get his degree in electronics engineering back in 1988 at good old Texas A&M. And he has been working in that field, gained all his certifications, and now he's the IT systems engineering supervisor at GVTC Communications. And for those of you outside of Texas, GVTC here in San Antonio, that does all our electricity for the homes and whatnot. He is married to Letty Garnett. He has a son, he has 2 sons with her and 1 stepson. And like I said before, he started OFAS, which is Operation Float a Soldier, back in 2005. And he started that after he came back from Kuwait and Iraq working as a contractor. So without further ado, let's welcome Wes Garnett. Hey, Wes.
Hey, Donna, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. I am doing good. So Wes and I I went and volunteered for his nonprofit, and we did some volunteer work up there, helping them set up and take down and whatnot. So it was nice to chat with him and learn all about OFAS, as we call it, Operation Floater Soldier. So Wes, I want to start kind of back from the beginning. You did your Navy time, you did college, you kind of started bouncing around. And did you do college and then was a contractor, or were you a contractor and then came back and did college?
I went to college first. So after I got out of the Navy, kind of bounced around, as you say, a little bit, some odd jobs. And I got into security, home security, then business security, and then saw that there would be a lot more money in if I got into the fire, detection systems, and studied for that test and passed that test, which is a 60% failure rate on your first attempt. And I got it on my first attempt.
Nice.
And yeah, it was I surprised myself on that one, actually. So I did that, and I started designing and installing fire systems, and then just kind of really started wanting to know more about the electronics and how all of that worked. So enrolled in A&M. It was the extension service from A&M. So I didn't actually get to go to campus. That would have been nice to go to the bonfires and everything, but I didn't do that. I went to an extension service out here in San Antonio that they have that offer the electronics engineering degree. And so I got that and got out and started working actually back in the fire and security again, because I couldn't find an electronics job. It was just really, they were hard to come by. And so I started contracting for other security companies and got my license and my insurance. And so started doing design work. And there's certain things that you can and can't do as a security company on the fire side, unless you have somebody that's on staff that holds that fire license, that certification. So I kind of subbed myself out to several, fire and security companies using my certification, my classification, if you will, and it's doing pretty good. And then I got a call from a guy to come work for him on computers. And I was like, well, I told him, I went in for the interview and I says, I hope you know, I don't know anything about computers at all. I said, I know how the CPU works. I know how the RAM works. I know how the motherboard works. I know how all of those talk together. The flips and flops of the CPU and the stack registers and the RAM and all. I understand all of that. But once I turn it on, I don't know how to operate one. And he said, well, that's fantastic, because I can teach you my way. And that way you don't come in with any bad habits. And I said, well, I'm okay to do that if you are. And so I started working for him. It was called Lottie Business Systems. It was a mom and pop shop. And I started working on Novell networks and so I just started grabbing books and reading books as much as I possibly could. And there's certain levels of certifications within that, just like all manufacturers and businesses and companies. So you have the certified Novell administrator. That's your first one that you get. And then you have your certified Novell engineer. So I worked up towards my C&E and I got that. The type of systems that this company was working on were the old word processing systems. So that kind of started going by the wayside as technology advanced, and they tried to advance with it. So they went out. They went bust, unfortunately. So I'm back out on the streets. And then I get on with a company called US Long Distance. And I stayed with them for a good 10 years, I guess. And that's where I met my wife. And she kept constantly breaking her computer, so I'd go up and fix it.
Smart girl.
She'll deny that to this day, but I know how she works,
Sly girl.
Yeah, well, she won, she got me. And
so you were working for them. When did the opportunity to go to or become a contractor and go overseas come in?
So I went with, so I was with US Long Distance for a while, and then I decided to go out with another organization that basically was going to offer more money, and it did, but then they closed their San Antonio office, and I would have to drive all the way to Austin, which I was not going to do. So I started just doing construction work while I was still trying to find a job in IT. And an email came across, and it offered me a whole bunch of money to go over as a IT consultant and work in Kuwait and Iraq, which wasn't Iraq. Iraq wasn't the original part of the contract, but it kind of morphed into that as I became a site manager. And I had more sites that I kept picking up that I had to go and monitor and make sure that everything was working properly. And so that actually happened in 2004. I got laid off in 2003, worked just doing whatever I could to put, food on the table and keep the house open, basically.
Right.
And that's when the opportunity arose. And so I talked to my wife about it, and I said, look, this is real, because I already called him. I already talked to him about it. And they sent me an offer letter, and here's the offer letter. And it was a lot of money. And we needed it at the time. And I said, I need you to pray on it. I don't want an answer now, because this is a big decision, because if I leave, you will be here by yourself for a minimum of a year.
Right.
And taking care of them. The boys were really young. They were 4 and 6 at the time. So she thought about it. She prayed about it. And God told her, he says, that everybody's life is written, their birth and death is in the book of life. Mm-hmm. And there isn't anything that we can do to stop that death. When it's your time, it's your time.
Right.
So she, got comfort in that. And she agreed that, okay, it would be a good move for me to go over there and work and just kind of get caught back up again, financially.
Well, and for our audience that's not military and have never worked or been in the environment of contractors, I mean, you really are kind of a civilian extension of the military in a way, mm-hmm. because you go overseas, and usually those contracts are written that you have to be in country for X amount of days, not allowed to leave until X, and then you have to be out of country for X period of time. And sometimes those are months, right? That you're away, that you have to be gone. You're home for a short period of time, anywhere from maybe 30 days to 60 days, and then you're gone again. And so, these spouses are getting left behind, and it's very similar to what our military spouses are experiencing, similar
Absolutely.
situations. And you guys get put in harm's way. You're right out there with the military. And so there have been many contractors that unfortunately also gave, the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes,
so there's a lot going on there. So while you were out there, what was it you started seeing that was the seeds for what exists today as in Operation Float a Soldier? What was starting to happen that made you go,
Yeah. So we have, in the military, there are 2 types of networks. They're called the NIPR and the SIPR. Mm-hmm. So the NIPR is the non-secure network, which is, think of just regular internet. Mm-hmm. And the SIPR is the secure internet protocol routing. So that's the secret internet that's out there, and it's all encrypted. So one of my jobs was to ensure that the encryption keys were up to date on our end where I'm at, so that we could transmit sensitive data back to CONUS, continental United States, the USA, right? One of those locations was known as the TMEP, the Theater Mortuary Evacuation Point. And unfortunately, that is where our KIAs came in from the field. They were cleaned, dressed, all of their personal belongings were cataloged, and then they took an Angel flight home. So due to the heat that we experience in the desert, I'm not going to say a lot of gear failure to it, but it was often that I would have to go over to the TMEP to refresh the zipper keys on the equipment so that we could encrypt the data back and make the notice that there's been a KIA.
Right.
And as I'm walking through the TMEP, I'm seeing these kids, I call them kids, 18, 19, early 20s, and they were kids to me. And, they paid the ultimate price, and it broke my heart. That's the reality of war.
Right.
Families lose their loved ones. They pay the ultimate price for our freedoms over here. So when I saw that, it came to me at some point that I have got to do something, because these young men and women were the ones that paid the ultimate price, but there are also a lot of men and women that got severely injured in battle, and that they're going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives, right? Fortunately, they do get to come home, be with their loved ones again, but sometimes, and a lot of times, it's not the whole person that left, physically and mentally.
Right.
We were able to, our organization addresses both aspects of that. Now, we don't do physical therapy per se like a physical therapist does. We are not licensed psychologists or psychiatrists where we can help you through your PTSD. All we can do is just offer you a really great day away from the hard times that you have to deal with on a daily basis of going through your recovery.
I'm going to hold you on that thought for a second, because we'll get into what OFAS really does, but I want to roll you back again. So you were seeing this, right? You were there resetting their zipper net, and you were watching these guys come home. And just for our audience, if you're not military, KIAs, most people are familiar with. Those are the killed in actions. And when you hear Angel Flight, those are bringing our KIAs home in there. And so most people in the military, or have some relation to the military, are familiar with those terms, and familiar, probably you've heard it, Wes, the song Angel Flight. It's a very very near and dear song to many of us, because it's talking about the C-130 bringing home a lot of our killed in actions, and those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. So you saw all that, and you realize, like, hey, I want to do something, but you don't know what it is at this point, right? You're just like, correct, I gotta do something. So you finish out your time there, right? However, how much longer did you have at this point that you?
Probably another 6 months. So
you're there 6 more months. This is brewing in the back of your head now, because I'm sure you still had to keep going over there. And it's impactful, so you come home, and when you're home, now what?
So I get back, and my father has a really old pontoon boat, and it's dilapidated and needs to be completely rebuilt. So I told Pop, I says, hey man, I'm going to grab that pontoon boat and I'm going to strip it down, and I'm going to rebuild it. And he said, that's great. It needs some work. So removed everything down to the pontoons, put all new deck, all new carpet, all new furniture, everything. And then the side railing that goes around it, which is the last thing. So as I'm just buttoning up the front, getting ready to put the front rails on to the, where it has the little gate, for those of you who are not familiar with pontoon boats, you got a little gate in the front that you open up so you can just walk right on. As I'm getting ready to put that on, let me back up just a little bit. I am a man of faith, born again Christian. And a lot of times when I'm alone by myself, I talk to God. I don't get answers back all the time. He's a kind of a silent fellow, but when I do get an answer, it's amazing. And I've had that happen to me twice. And this time he told me to leave the front gates and railings off so that we could make it wheelchair accessible. And then we can get the guys and girls from the hospital who are going through rehab and bring them out and take them fishing.
Okay, so hold on, let me stop you right there. So
Okay.
at that point, were you just redoing the boat just to redo the boat? Like
That was it.
You were
Yeah.
just redoing the boat, and then as you were kind of putting, like, you were doing it just as almost like your own decompression, right? Like just
Right.
redo, make something new, make it better, and
It was
then
my
all of a
quiet
sudden,
time.
yeah, your quiet time. And so through that, as you were doing it, you hear you're going to be taking care of some hurt people in a different way.
Yep, absolutely. It was
interesting.
Yeah, it was a very impactful and profound moment for me because, like I say, God's only talked to me twice in my life, where it was absolute that He is talking. I've been a born again Christian since 1992, and I talk and pray a lot to God, and this was it brought chills to me because now I have had this desire, but I didn't know how to fulfill it, how to go about it. What was this desire? How do I just really didn't understand it 100%. I just knew that I had to do something, but what was that something? And I had no idea. And then when God spoke to me and told me that, I have a really good friend, a brother in Christ, Seth Warnick. I called him up and I told him, Seth, I've got this idea. I'm fixing, Pop's boat, and this is what just happened. I says, would you like in on this with me? And he was absolutely, I would love to do that with you.
Excellent.
So, well, him and I, that was it. And he just he works for Microsoft on the DoD side, and he's, at the time they called them technical account managers. So he's a TAM for Microsoft dealing with DoD. And he says, I know a colonel over at BAMC. So again, to the audience, which is Brooke Army Medical Center, that's where all of our wounded were coming in to get fixed up. They have really good facilities there.
And that's here in San Antonio. That's our Brooks Army Medical Center. And behind it, they also have the Center for Intrepid, which is the rehab portion of it.
Right.
So.
And it's now SAMC, the San Antonio Medical Center, because I don't know why they changed it, but they
actually did. If you go into the hospital now, unless it changed again, but the commander there was like, that's BAMC. They put it back. So,
well, good. That's news to me.
Yeah, they kept it as BAMC, and they were very adamant. Like there were signs in the hospital saying this is BAMC, and you're like, okay.
Great. That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. I like that old stuff.
If it's still like that, but that's how it was when I was going in there. So.
Yeah. So Seth was able to get that colonel to get us over to get us in touch with the proper people at the Warrior Family Support Center. And we call it the Wolf Sack. That's what we call it. That's what everybody calls it, the Wolf Sack.
The services all have their own. We have Airman Family Readiness in the Air Force, and I can't remember the Navy's term. And then the Army has the Warrior Family Center. So,
and there was a wife of a retired 3-star who was kind of the boss. She was the boss, and everybody called her mom. And she was a pit bull. Nothing less than pit bulls were actually afraid of her. You could not get near any of these warriors unless you went through her. Judith Markells was her name. A wonderful, wonderful woman. And so we had an audience with Judith, and we talked about our idea and what we want to do. And she had some stipulations, which we agreed to 100%, that there has to be a time limit. If any of them say that they want to leave, then we, because they're not feeling well, then we got to bring them back, absolutely 100%. We'll do that. And then we told her that we will never have media at any of these events, because that's not what this was about.
Correct.
It has absolutely nothing to do about me and Seth. Me and Seth are just God's tools. That's it. That's all we were. And so we wanted to make sure that these men and women had the best time of their life with these injuries, because what they have to do, or we can talk about what these folks have to go through over there, especially the amputees and the burn victims and the TBIs, the traumatic brain injury guys and girls. It's a lot. It's brutal what they have to endure to be able to get back into society.
It's not only the physical, the physical is part of it, but the mental
absolutely
is just as excruciating. This whole change. I've taken care of many, and to watch the grieving process that occurs and then coming out through the other side of acceptance, that's a road. That is a hard ass road.
Absolutely.
And so when you see these guys on the other side living their best life, there is some serious respect that goes down for them, because they have been down the peaks and troughs and dug in some deep troughs and climbed some steep hills to get where they're at. So, so yeah, there's a lot of respect there.
A lot of respect. I have so many stories, and we don't have enough time. After doing this for 17 years, I've got so many stories that I would love to share with you. When maybe off screen or something, one day we'll sit down and talk about all
you know
this.
What? Share, because I want to, part of the focus on this is to talk about, obviously, the nonprofit, because it's an awesome nonprofit, but how you've been successful for 17 years. But it's still interesting to hear some of the stories. So if you have one that is sanitized, obviously we don't want to put anybody in a bad situation, sure, but give one. We'd love to hear it.
All right. Well, I've got many that are near and dear to my heart. I'm going to do one quick one and then one with a little bit more in depth. There is a Gold Star family that is there. So they came out one year for 3 events, and the husband came along, and he was, messed up pretty bad overseas in battle, and had such a large time. The next season comes around. The wife shows up with the 3 kids, but he had passed. And that was 9 years ago. And she continues to come out and bring her kids to each of our events. So I have been able to witness the kids grow. They have wrote me letters personally, thanking me for our love and support. And these were kids, and now they're moving into high school. And I've got those in my lockbox. Yeah.
They were out there, right? This time?
Yes, they were
there.
I
know who you're talking about. I mean, we don't have to
I don't want to drop names because I haven't had permission to drop a name. So,
and just for the audience, so they understand, when they say Gold Star family, Wes, what are we talking about when we say Gold Star family?
Gold Star family is somebody who lost their spouse or loved one, a child, whatnot, in battle.
Right. Any family member that lost their soldier. So whether it's a spouse, whether it's a child, whether it's a sibling, they're considered Gold Star families. So yeah, correct. So that's I have met that family, not in depthly, but I saw them there, and I will have to say that the whole time there was smiles on their faces the whole time out there.
They do enjoy themselves. Unfortunately, they've been able to put that loss behind them enough that they can move forward in life and become the productive people that I know their father would want them to be. And they are amazing kids. The wife is an amazing woman, love them all to death, and will do anything for them at any time. Just fantastic people.
So somewhere, go ahead.
You go. All right. Well, the last one, which was, this one, man, this one just tears me up. Sometimes it's hard to get through, but there's a gentleman who was, after he was discharged from the hospital and able to go home, and the family moved here to San Antonio. He spent a long time in the hospital, years, and rehabbing. Finally was able to get out, go to the house that they got in San Antonio, and he locked himself in, and he didn't come out for 5 years. The most he would do was go to his mailbox, and he would not. That was it. That was as farthest he would go. He did not want to integrate back into society. He did not want to be around people. A lot of the guys that and gals. I don't want to, when I say guys, I want y'all to understand I'm trying to be inclusive here, because there's a lot of women out there that
Yes.
are just as in the same position as the men are. Um, the neighbor was coming out to our events, and she finally convinced him to please come out to just one, and he did. And one of my roles at that time when he came out was I run water rescue, me and another guy. We have our own wave runners that have backboards on them, med kits on them, in case anything happens to anybody in the water. And we're constantly driving around on our jet skis and watching. And I knew he was on a boat. He finally got on a boat, and he was sitting on there because I was informed, like, hey, I'm just going to say Joe. Okay. I can only use his name. They said, hey, Joe is on that boat. And I was like, really? I'm all right. Well, I'm going to go see him. So I drove up while they were swapping people out on an inner tube. And I said, hey, Joe. And he turns and I says, how you doing? And this smile came across his face like sunshine. And he says, I'm having a good time, brother. And I said, man, that's fantastic. I said, lunch is in about 45 minutes, man. You mind if I sit with you? And he's like, no. So after lunch, I prayed over our lunch. I got my plate. I found him. Everybody, the guests all go first, and the volunteers, they follow the last. So I got over there and I found him, and I sat, across the table from him, and we talked and joked, and like, where are you from? Kind of just another quick little point. Everybody who volunteers has always been instructed that you never, ever, ever talk about the injury, how you got your injury.
Right.
Because that they're there to forget that.
Yes.
So we talk about, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? What are your favorite things to do? Hobbies, family, things of that nature. How many siblings, wife, kiddos, blah, just the fun stuff, right? And we talked, and we had a great time. And I said, well, Joe, I got to tell you, I'm really glad to see you here, because I was pre-informed that you did not want to come out of the house. And I'm super proud of you for taking this step. I mean, this is a huge step for you, and I understand that. And second, I really, really, really hope to see you out here again. And he did. He continued to come out to our events. And when he left that first event, he gave me a hug like my mama gives me a hug. It was a bear hug.
Mm-hmm.
He had tears in his eyes, which caused me to have tears in my eyes. And we just, hugged and then shook hands and hugged again. And he went on home. And that's my paycheck.
I was going to say, there's your payment right there.
Yep. I got my paycheck for the year on that one. An amazing man. And he continues to come out. I've got some trickling in of some reports that he's going, grocery shopping. He goes out. He's now integrating back into society. And I would like to think that Operation Floater Soldier was an integral part of getting him back out. Of course, it's all him to take that step, but we were a venue for that first step, and to show love and appreciation. And
I think you can take a lot of credit for that, because what you probably showed him is that the world is not 100% bad. They have been through so much that trying to get out in a society that doesn't understand what they've been through can be very overstimulating, overwhelming. And it's very difficult when people don't understand. So, I had somebody one time that we were caring for, and I got a report from the clinic. They were bringing him in for, his therapy session. And he actually had a flashback as he was going into the clinic, and he dove down and he was hollering, get down, get down, get down. Whatever happened, something triggered him. He went into a full flashback. Doesn't even remember what he did. In the clinic, or even on the base, there would be some recognition of what happened, right? Like, okay, there's a flashback, or somebody would have some understanding somewhere, right? You do that in the middle of, the North Star Mall here, and that happens, you might have a different scenario on your hands, right? Mm-hmm. And I was just looking through social media one day, and there's a nonprofit called Military Crime. And I've talked to the girl before. They had been through a lot. And her and her husband both had significant PTSD. And she's very open about it. And she just wrote this piece about calling the police for help and not getting the help that they were hoping to get. It turned very bad, right? These guys are, and I'm not saying that the police do bad things, so please don't get me wrong. It's just that when something's happening and it's happening in that civilian world, it doesn't always translate properly. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's really not shocking that some of these guys are like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I will just stay in the safety of my home. I don't want to deal with all that stimulation in the outside world for numerous reasons, right?
Right.
So I would absolutely say, in my humble opinion, that 100% Florida Soldier was probably the inception point where he's like, damn, there's some good people in this world, and bad things don't always happen when I walk out the door.
Amen.
So maybe
Right.
let me try that again, so that's impressive. I want to go back a little bit because we started talking about Florida Soldier, and I want to tie in how you got started. So you did the boat, and you said, I was renovating it because I just needed some alone time, and that was my productive alone time. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, I had a little talk with the big guy upstairs, and I am supposed to be doing this crazy thing. Like, I'm going to be helping these guys, and boom, it pans itself out. Right. So now you're in a scenario where you're helping the guys from BAMC, and you're getting like bus loads. And I remember talking to some of your staff. They're like, oh my God, when the buses would come in, it was like mad chaos, right? They were coming up, and we're checking them in, and we're getting them situated. So you did that, and that was during the high times of all these campaigns going on, right? So guys are getting injured, they're coming back home, they're needing this care, they're in hospitals for months. You are offering them a peaceful day, right? Just to go have fun and just forget all their issues. The campaigns and the war starts winding down. Not as many, fortunately, right? We're not getting as many injured coming into BAMC. How did this start changing?
Kind of like, as you say, so when at the height of the war, and when we were getting a lot of injured, as they were coming into BAMC, we started off with the smaller vans that would bring out about a dozen, and then 2 vans, and then it got too big to where they would get the bus and they would fill out the bus, and then some folks wanted to bring their POV, personally owned vehicle, their own car, and so we would have a lot of people showing up, and we just kind of check them in, and it became a community effort, kind of just to set the geography for our listeners. Canyon Lake is up in the hill country, just north of San Antonio. It's known as the jewel of the hill country. And, a lot of people live around here. I don't know the exact population, but there's a lot of people that live here. And it's a big community. People come out for the parades and this and that. Social media is pretty good. We do have a Facebook presence. Again, we do social media, but we don't do media at the events. We just take pictures and things of that nature.
Right.
We post them on Facebook, So word gets out that we've got all of these vets going to be bussed out to our event. We have the local law enforcement that works with us, and they do an escort. Then we also have several different motorcycle outfits that are part of the entourage to get them there, and where they're all flying flags and whatnot. And then those that aren't part of the procession, we would have 100+ people lining the main road that came out to the location where we're going to be at on the water. And they're all waving flags and got their bullhorns out,
Wow.
and just I mean, we'll have 100+ people, out there just showing their appreciation. People are coming off of the bus in tears before we've even started.
Wow.
And
That's the high time. I've seen the pictures
yeah,
where they're,
yeah,
I mean, it was impressive.
it
But
was
then things
great.
started slowing down,
Yeah.
fortunately for the
Fortunately,
people.
yes. Unfortunately for us, because we really love entertaining our vets. But fortunately, we don't have that many out there at BAMC anymore. Really, thank God. I'm just so glad, of that. But a lot of those folks integrated out here. Texas is the best place to live as prior military. I mean, the benefits, the tax benefits, the tax breaks, there's so much that is beneficial for you living in Texas, and the vets have figured that out, and they stayed and started a business, went to work, and they come out. So we don't really have people coming from BAMC now because they're not there. Fortunately, as we said.
Right. Fortunately.
So these are the folks that, the wounded warriors that live, amongst us in our area, anywhere, New Braunfels, San Marcos, San Antonio, outlying little towns outside of, the municipalities. They all come out and enjoy our events.
But anybody can come. Just, I mean, if they were here on vacation, this event was going on, they just need to show up,
They just need to sign up
and show up, kind of thing.
Yep.
So, which
Absolutely.
is all good. So so just so you guys are getting a view, right? It's a day, and I went up there myself. I was there all day with them, and this is kind of how it works: is that they come on up, they sign in, and there is everything available, right, Wes? You got the beach over there that people can go play in the water.
Yeah.
We've got people monitoring the beach. We've got boats. My God, I kept watching people coming in, volunteering, like bringing their boats or driving them over because they lived on the other side of the lake and they drove their boat over, and then you had jet skis. And I mean, then there was right up on the land, there was cornhole, there's a playground. It was amazing. And then we had a paramedic, and then I quietly told him I was a nurse, I'd help him out if he needed it, but we didn't have any issues, so they didn't need my services. I was happy. But they had everything there, right? I mean, it was an entire day. They came out when they wanted to. It started at 9 a.m. It went till 5. People were showing up throughout the day. I think we had a total of 63 people, and it didn't feel like it. And then halfway through it, lunch. And let me tell you, this was Texas style lunch. Nobody is going hungry when you're going to float a soldier. They have the biggest barbecue trailer that I've seen, and they were grilling everything: chicken legs, chicken wings, sausage, brisket, sliced brisket, shredded brisket. They had all the fixings that go with it. And if you're not from Texas and don't know what that is, potato salad and coleslaw and beans, and they had bread there. It was everything. Plus they had desserts. They had made chocolate pudding, banana pudding, they had watermelon, they had cookies. I mean, you name it, you could not be hungry. There's no way that you could go away hungry. So all of that was there. And then they did that, had lunch, you guys even give away stuff. I mean, you gave away 3 like milk cartons full of summertime fun things, gave that away on top of it. And then everybody else, when they're done eating, they go off and play for the rest of the day. And then usually 4:30ish, we're starting to kind of pick up. And heck, some of the people that were there as guests started helping us pick up. I mean, they were jumping in. One gentleman was like, "How can I help, ma'am?" I was like, "Okay." So it was a great community, a great event. You guys also had, because we need to get around to different locations quickly, so you had side-by-sides that we could drive around in. I saw 2 trailers plus the barbecue trailer, couple Kubotas, life jackets up the wazoo, boats coming out, jet skis coming out. So how I'm going to talk the business side of it, right? Because the fun side, that's easy. I mean, we go there, you volunteer, it's a great day. Tell me about the business side. How did you start? How did you raise the money? How did you fund it? And how do you keep sustaining this?
So the first 4 years of OPUS came out of our savings, out of Seth and I's savings. Blew through mine pretty quick, and there was a little contention, in the household over that, as you can imagine. But the Lord always provides. So after the fourth year, a gentleman said that people wanted to give us money, but they also wanted it to be a tax write-off. So we couldn't accept the money because we weren't a 501c3.
Right.
So we kept paying out of our pocket. And finally, we decided that it would be really beneficial, because we've been doing this for so long, and it's just growing and growing, and it's costing us more and more money out of our own pockets, that if we could get people to donate money to us, the people want to, people throw us, a little bit here, $20, $100, every little bit help. Trust me, every little dollar help, dime. And, but corporations wanted to throw money at us, and we couldn't accept it because of the lack of a nonprofit status. So Seth reached out to a friend of his who knew a guy, and he said that he would file our 501c3 paperwork for us for free.
Nice.
And that was very nice.
Was he a lawyer, or was he just lawyer?
Yeah, he's a lawyer. Yeah.
Nice.
So he did that for us, and we got our status, and then we just kind of started, people wanted to give us money. We'd say, yes, we can write you a tax receipt. People wanted to start donating gear. And then at some point we had to stop taking it or tell them no, because some folks just wanted to dump garbage and get a write-off for it. And then when I found out that we can't assess it. And so just for those of you who are looking to do nonprofit, and if it's something similar to what we're doing, and if you have people that want to give you gear, and then they want you to put a price on that, you cannot do that. All you can say is that I received this 2000 Yamaha side by side in running condition. Okay. Then they have to go and put a value on it.
Well, that's like Goodwill, right? If you drop something off at Goodwill, it's funny you say that, because I always wondered, well, why do they give it to me to write I have to write my own, what I did, and I look it up and I write down the assessed value, and, so that's interesting.
That's pretty much, how you do it. That is how you do it. The person donating actually has to put down what the value of the item was. We can't put it down.
Gotcha.
So then at that point, anyways, that was a little sidebar there. Just, we stopped doing that. It was just kind of, you know what, we need money. So we start fundraising. We do fundraising twice a year as well. There's an organization up here at the lake called Water Oriented Recreation District, called aka WORD, and they give us several $1,000s every year. And then my company that I work for, Guadalupe Valley Telephone Co-op, they give us $5,000 every year. Microsoft gives us money every year, but between just those three entities, it's not enough for us to sustain financial needs of the organization. So we do fundraising. The biggest one that always works for us is a barbecue plate sale. We pick a 3-day weekend. We park that big monster pit out there in an area. So again, paint a picture for our listeners. The lake, as the water comes out of the lake, it goes down to it feeds the Guadalupe River, which as it comes out, there's a recreational spot called the Horseshoe. So you put in at one bridge and then you float around to the other bridge, but it's like a horseshoe. So you just almost come right back out where you put in. And it's about a 2-hour float. So people are just doing that all day long. Well, we park our trailer right there. People are getting hungry, and we don't sell a plate. We tell them who we are and what we do, and we load them up with however much they want, and they say, just put some money in the jar down there at the end, and thank you very much, right?
Yep.
And then now we've also we got on with the Square, so we can take a credit card,
right,
whatnot, which helps us out because a lot of people only just carry a credit card now. They don't carry
that's
cash.
me. My purse is my husband.
Oh, I try to keep at least $100 in there for the little things, So that's a big one. I mean, we'll cook up 15 briskets and slice them all up, get a whole bunch of sides and fixings, 5 gallons of potato salad, 5 gallons of coleslaw, 50 loaves of bread, and we go through all of it.
Yeah.
And people, when they find out what we do, they're generous. We had at one time, some people want to take some to-go plates, and the most that we ever put together for anybody on that particular day was 4 plates. And the guy took that home. Whether he paid $100 or not, I don't know. But there were 5 $100 bills in the jar at the end of the day.
Wow.
Plus a lot of so we clean up. I mean,
yeah.
we make $4,000 or $5,000.
The donations
really
are always
plate sale.
When you don't set the price. It's interesting what happens.
I think it works better that way.
Yeah.
Plus, there's a legal issue.
Yep.
If we sell you the plate, then there's taxing involved, and then there's also I forget, with the health department, you got to have a license, and blah blah blah. So we said, you know what, people, people are generous.
Yes,
they are. Yes, we have some bad apples in our society, but I think for the lion's share of the people in our society, they are good-hearted.
Yes, I agree.
When they see an organization that is doing something good to society, it makes them feel good to know that they were able to participate and help out in a small way. $20 for a $5 plate, $100 for $5, something. It's a feel good for you, and it really helps us out to be able to continue.
There's always a give back. So, because when I was up there, we had 63 people, right? That didn't include staff, and I think you had enough food for 250 people. I'm pretty sure. There was a lot of food there. And so I had said to, I think it was like Melissa, Nikki, and Dee Dee, I'm like, what do you guys do with the rest? There's a lot of food. Oh, they're like, oh, don't worry about that. And they made plates for the people that run, Jacobs Creek up in Canyon Lake. They made plates for fire department people that are around, all the first responders that were up there doing their thing, or even just stopping by. And you guys, I don't know how many plates I watched go out, like just stacks of them. And then when we were all done, then we bagged up the rest of the food, like in little bags, and we set them out. Well, we had them in coolers for safety, but people could come grab and go. They could take a bag of sausage or a bag of, well, they didn't take the watermelon. We didn't let that go. We ate it, but
it was good on that hot day.
So hot, like it wasn't going anywhere. But they could take stuff and then they could go. So people could take loaves of bread or whatever's going on. So, the nice thing is we don't know what people are going through. We see them up there. We see them happy. We see them having a day to relax. And we don't know if they have mounting bills, and that food right there might be their dinner for the next 2-3 nights. We have no idea, right? So that give back, just here, it will be there for you,
what you
right?
can use. Yep. Take what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question, like I said, there was a lot of stuff up there. I was impressed, like the boats that come in, these are people that they own these boats and they come over for the day, and they drive their boats for these people. How many do you own? Any of the boats?
We have some pontoon boats over in the marina that they got pretty old, and the engines weren't really dependable, so we scuttled them. But we don't own any boats now. Well, we still do, but we don't use those 2 pontoon boats. That pretty much all the boats. Absolutely, all the boats that you saw were volunteers that come out and bring.
That's pretty cool. And what about the jet ski? Same thing?
We own those.
You own the jet skis.
Yeah,
And did
we
you
own 8 jet
purchase?
skis.
Were those donations? Were
Purchased.
those purchased from the donations from people?
Mm-hmm.
So when did you become more sustainable? Like it wasn't at a point where your wife wanted to choke you out because you kept using the funds, right?
Yeah.
When did she start liking you again? That's what I want to know. When
I
did
was
you become
probably
sustainable?
about 2 years into being a nonprofit. That's when we were able to, because, I'm not a marketing guy by any means.
Because you were military. None of us in the military
Yeah.
are marketing people. We don't like it.
I can't do it, or sales. I just can't do it. Hats off to those who can. If I say, hey, would you like to buy this? No. All right, bye.
Right.
I don't even continue to say, well, let me tell you about this widget and how great it is and how it's going to change your life and make it better. They just say no, and it's okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
That's it. So I'm terrible sales, terrible marketing. I can talk to people. I love engaging with people.
Yeah.
I love people. I love to help people. But marketing and sales are not so good. But anyways, we just we became more sustainable on year 6, being able to make companies aware of who we are and what we do. And I had to go out there and sell us,
Well, that's how I met you, was the chamber. Like,
yeah.
And Jay met you before, told me, hey, I met this guy that runs Operation Flow Soldier. And I'm like, okay. And then literally the next time I had a chamber lunch, you were there. And it was funny because I remember we did a podcast and we were talking about networking and how much I don't like it either. And I told him, I said, I went to the lunch and Jay wasn't there that day. And I'm like, I was just kind of feeling reserved and shy. And I wasn't really talking to anybody. I go, and then I run into Wes and we're like, tika the whole time. And we just started hitting it off. And what was interesting, like you said, I like to engage with people. And what happened that day? We walked out the door, we were going to our cars, and the whole time we're leaving, I joked with Jay, I'm like, it's like I was with a celebrity. They were just like, oh, hey, Wes, and shaking his hand, and here's my card. And I'm all like, all right. And I said, and we left, and a car pulled up. Remember, the car pulled up next to you, and started talking about some of the guys that they're family members. And you were like, yeah, have him come out, gave your card. And then you're like, pointed at me and like, hey, she does stuff too. And handed the card. And, it was just, that is networking, right?
That's my kind of networking.
That's my kind too, right? I'm not good at like, I got a widget and it's a cool widget. And it's like, oh, God. But if we're passionate and we love what we do, which you clearly are, then it just kind of naturally comes out. It just naturally flows. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you're not really in it, it just is clunky.
I am trying to sell you me.
Yeah.
That's because I want to help. I want to serve you. I want to be a servant of the Lord to you for a day and show you happiness and kindness and the best time that you can. So I'm literally selling me when I'm talking to people about the organization, and I can sell me. I'm not selling something that's not true or real or
it's authentic,
or not being represented properly. You're going to get me, and I will be your servant for the day.
Theron, Theron Van Meter. Did you meet him? He's one of our chamber guys. He has a home inspection business, and he was on our podcast too, and doing startup, and he went through the Skill Bridge program that the DoD offers. And we had him on, and he was very funny when you talk about networking. He said, I tried to sell the business and it just wasn't, like, I was so awkward with it. Like, hey, I do home inspection, right? And he's like, it was just so awkward. He goes, yeah. And then I stopped doing that and I sold me. And Theron's the nicest guy. And so he said that, he's like, I sold me. Like, here I am. Yes, I do this, but hey, how are you, kind of thing. And he goes, man, did that go a lot better? I said, yeah, because you build trust, right? He has a for-profit business, right? And And that business is one of trust. Like you get a shoddy home inspector and you hear it quickly, you know? So
yeah, these days, especially with
yeah.
social media,
Mm-hmm. And
a million
so
people know in a minute.
that's right. So you're selling you. And in the nonprofit world, I find it interesting. There is over 40,000 nonprofits geared towards veterans, right?
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this earlier. There's a nonprofit called Veteran Help Point. Michelle Lang is the one that runs it. And she's in the beginning of it. She's in startup phase right now. And her mission is to collect resources. So say you live in the middle of Mississippi somewhere and you're struggling, you should be able to go on there, type in your location and find resources within like 50,000 miles. Matter of fact, I think I gave her yours already, but find resources within whatever radius, right? 50 miles or something, because that's one of the struggles is that all the big national ones everybody knows about, but these smaller ones that are really doing things, it's hard for people to find, right? You've been around 17 years. I've been here 12 years and I just heard about you when I met you at the chamber, right? So there's that aspect. And then the other aspect is the nonprofits that are actually walking the walk, right? They're not just talking, they're walking the walk. There's a lot of nonprofits like, yeah, we're doing this. And then you get in there and they're not really doing anything, right? So when you see something like Operation Florida Soldier that's been surviving and thriving for 17 years, right? What I like about it is you keep it simple, right? You're not complicated. Your board members are all the people that are volunteering, you know. I've talked to them and they're 100%, you know, into it. And I learned stuff. I mean, I was talking with Melissa, right? And she's the one that does your books, and learning like, hey, you know, you got to be careful. Your in and out makes a difference. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, if you're just like bringing in all this money, you know, I'll just make it up. Like you bring in 100,000 and you spend 3,000. It's actually a little flag for the auditors going, hey, what are you doing with the other 97,000?
Right.
That it has to be a nice, gentle teeter totter. And so she's like, if you start bringing in or spending over 50, it turns into different forms and there's more complications and stuff like that. So she goes, you want to know what your overhead is, what you're spending, and what you need to fundraise to, and make those relatively close. So at the end of every year, you don't have to be zero, but you want to have shown that you've been using what you're bringing in. And I thought,
basically what comes in, what goes out.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I was like, I don't have a nonprofit, so it wouldn't even cross my mind. So it's another thing for people to think about, you know, when they're getting into this world, that, you know, you go put on a massive gala and bring on $150,000 and go, yeah, look, what are you spending it on? Don't tuck that away. You're gonna be paying some serious taxes on it. And
I can think of quite a few things that I would buy with that kind of money.
Right, exactly.
We run on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
We pull off a really good event, but we don't have a lot of money. Again, you know, but when we start to run low, we start to do things. And again, I'm a firm believer, you know, God provides. I mean, so many things have happened in this organization that it was apparent that God's hand was involved. It couldn't have been any other way. We're running pretty low. We can't get a fundraiser in right now because of the time of the year it is that nobody's out and about. It's not summertime where we can attract a large audience. And then all out of the blue, you know, a $3,000, $4,000 check just comes into the mail from somebody that just wants to throw us some money, right?
Right at the right time.
Right at the right time. So that's one of the things that always impresses me about, you know, God provides. Yeah.
I would agree. And whether it's, you know, your thing is God, whether it's the universe, whatever it may be, there is something bigger than us that at the end of the day makes it all work out, right? And
absolutely.
And there, I mean, really, what more is there to say? You know, you get your reward by seeing the looks on their faces. And I was there. I mean, I watched it, and There's a lot of little kids that were just out there playing, and you had to stop and remind yourself, like, yeah, those are kids being kids. Like, that's what goes on in your head, right? They're out there running and playing, but you have to stop and think why those people are there, right? What have they been through? And everybody that's been in the military either has experienced some level of trauma, whether it's direct, meaning they got injured severely, their family members have to receive not a whole person anymore. And I mean that not just physically, sometimes physically, but emotionally and mentally, not the same person. They have to go find their new norms. And the kids, it always breaks my heart with the kids, because they don't get a say in that. That is the life they got brought into. And that is the life that they have to adjust to, right? Exactly. And so when you give them a day that says, hey, you just be you and just go be a kid, or just go be a person that day and worry about nothing. I mean, it's above you have,
it's a beautiful scene.
Yes.
Because everybody who's volunteering has the heart of gold and is a servant at heart and is there to serve. And when these guests are there, which I tell them in the morning, I says, we're here to be your servants for the day. So if you need anything throughout the event, just reach out to somebody that you see that has the volunteer, the yellow band.
Yeah.
Find somebody with a yellow band and say, I need this. Where can I find it? Or can I go do this? Can I get on a boat? Can I ride a wave runner? Can I go, whatever. Find somebody with a yellow band, and they will do whatever it takes to make that wish or that desire to come true.
And we were riding those side by sides all over the place, getting around.
Yes, you were.
We had fun because we got to ride the side by sides everywhere. We're like, oh, you need some water? We'll bring a case down. And it was fun for everybody. Absolutely. It's not. I didn't find it hard.
It's not work.
When everybody's coming together, I mean, really, lots of hands make light work, and I don't know, it took us, because I remember you guys telling us, be up there by 8, and then everybody comes at 9. I'm like, my God, is that enough time? And we all came up a little early. I think I was there by like 7:30, and you guys came up not long after that. And so we started a little before 8, and we were ready by 9, because there was a lot of people there that were just ready to go. Yeah, it was good. So it's
kind of what do they call it? Organized chaos.
It is. I call it blissful chaos.
Know exactly. We all have what we call our swim lanes.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We have somebody that's in charge of setting up the beach area, which the beach area has a bunch of canopies and chairs, snacks and drinks, water mats that people go out and float on. Chairs in the water, so you can just kind of sit in the water and relax. It's a very gradual beach that goes out. It's crystal clear.
And you have tents everywhere. I mean, there's all the little pop-up tents that you have.
Got to keep the shade on them.
Yeah,
In Texas heat, you got to have that shade.
Lord, we were just under melting that day, weren't we? That was one of the cooler days at 90.
That was a good day.
This
last event was a very good day.
We had a hot summer, even hot for Texans hot. That's pretty hot.
Yeah, when it's 105 on the water, generally it's cooler by the water because the water is about 88 degrees. So, of course, that's going to kind of cool the air off to the 80s, you would think.
Yeah.
And it's 105 outside the air, the actual water temperature just right, or the air temperature just right by the water was still, 100, 101.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it can be pretty brutal.
I want to wrap it up, but I want to touch on this really briefly because there's another side of Float a Soldier that I didn't know about. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because Nikki was telling me this, that the summertime is Float a Soldier. We do have winters here in Texas. People actually don't swim in December. I don't know. Sometimes we've gone on the coast before in November and dipped our feet in, but typically it's pretty chilly. So you actually provide another service in the off season, right?
We do. It's hill hunting. So up here at the lake, we have several parks, and there is a plethora of deer up here at Canyon Lake. They're in the neighborhoods, they're in the parks. When I say a plethora, I am talking in the thousands, if not tens of thousands of white-tailed deer.
Oh, we saw them, didn't we? Remember, we were
Oh yeah.
watching them
Oh
all
yeah.
together, looking at us.
They'll come over, eat out of your hand, and
Yeah.
some of them will, not all, about 30% of them will come over and eat out of your hand because they just grown up around
Yeah.
people. So actually, for the non-hunters out there, there is a reason why you need to cull a herd. When you have too many deer and not enough food, all the deer suffer. They start to starve. So you have to bring the herd down to a sustainable level so that there's enough food for the herd that is alive.
Especially if there's no predators, natural predators up there calling that herd, right?
Roger.
There's actually been shown like when wolves are removed from a scene and then the deer and the moose and them will overpopulate and they'll actually strip forests down. So there's a balance, right? You got to have a balance.
And exactly, you have to keep that natural balance. Otherwise, it's just bad for the animals.
Yeah.
So the Army Corps of Engineer approached me one season and said, would you like to hunt the parks and cull out a bunch of deer? And of course, absolutely, through my organization, not me, the organization OFIS, and bring hunters out. So we bring out 12 hunters on Friday. We set up at Joint Base San Antonio. It's a base out here on the lake with their own marina and everything. And they have trailers. So we rent all the trailers, and they're really nice. They're 2-bedroom trailers with pull-out couches, air conditioning, showers. I mean, they're really nice trailers, right? Wow. And then we set up what we call the circus tent. The circus tent it's a very big tent, and it holds all of our tables for eating. It holds our chow line down at the end. We have another separate tent that we put up, which is the kitchen tent that we do. It's got a big hot plate in there, a large hot plate. You can do about 40 burgers on this at one time. Then we have the barbecue pits out back where we do steak night on Saturday night. And so it's really big. So the hunters come in on Friday. They need to get there by 1100. We do a little in-dock at anywhere from 12 to 1300. We have several of the game wardens come out. They give a briefing for us to introduce any new laws that might have changed, proper hunting technique, what constitutes a buck that you can take or not take, what to look. Anyways, just kind of going through all of the hunting rules and regulations. So then we go out to another place out by the water where we've set up targets that behind the targets is a hill. So we're shooting basically into a hill. Now we're using 12 gauge shotguns, but they're slugs. It's called a sabot round, S-A-B-O-T. It's rifled the whole 9 yards. It's very accurate at 100 yards. They have scopes, the whole 9 yards. We pre-sight them to where they're zeroed, but then we give a gun to a hunter, and we put a band on it and put his name on it. And he knows which gun is his, which number. So we sight it in. We use a box of shells or however many to where he's now hitting bull at 40 yards, because that's the distance between the blind and the feeder that we have set up out in the parks. So we go out to the parks Friday evening. We take some deer. We take them back to another location where we skin and quarter the deer and put them on ice. And then we take those back to camp. Then the next morning we get up and we go out and we hunt some more deer. And then we skin, quarter, and put those into the ice buckets. And then we take that back to camp. And then we take Friday nights and we start processing all of that meat out. So we cut, the backstrap into medallions. We keep the tenders. We grind everything else. We make some cube meat out of some of the hindquarters, portion of one of the muscle groups out of the hindquarter. And then we vacuum seal all of that and we throw it on ice.
Wow.
And we do that for every animal that we get. So on Sunday, when we wake up, we have breakfast, and then we start, breaking camp. And then at the end of it, the men are told to bring their ice chests with them. And then they just kind of do a little round robin circle going around the ice chest that we have full of meat. And then somebody behind that ice chest is just throwing a pack of meat into your ice chest. And it just continues to go until we're out of meat. The very first hunt that we had, to kind of give you an idea of the amount of deer that these guys take home, The very first hunt, it was 67 deer that we culled out on one weekend.
Holy cow.
So we got skinned, quartered, processed, vacuum packed, sealed, and gave 67 deer away.
And just for the audience to understand that is regulated with the game warden. So they're not like over hunting. They're not over, like, they are all, it's all controlled.
Correct.
So it's not just random. Look at us. We're going to see how many we can get. It
No,
really
we had a
is
goal
specific.
per park. So you have the biologists that come out to each of the parks, and they say, we need 100 taken out of here. We need out of this park. We need 75 taken out of this park. Now we're hunting 3 separate parks, and we rotate those parks. There's about a dozen parks out here. So we rotate through all of these different parks throughout the years. So we hunt these 3 parks this year. We hunt 3 other parks the following year, maybe one from that one. We kind of mix it up according to what the biologist tells us when they go out in October and November and say, look, all right, we do a head count. Take this many out of these parks.
Right.
And we do. And we do our best to take that many out of the park so that we can put the herd back to a healthy status.
Right.
We leave the breeding bucks alone. So they're the genetics.
Right.
You have what's known as a cull buck. Mm-hmm. Those bucks have bad genetics. They're weak, mm-hmm. and they just do not breed well. Yeah. So we take out the cull bucks. Now you see a really nice buck that comes through. He's a big body. He's got a thick neck. He's got a really nice 8-point rack with a lot of protein.
The one you really want.
The one that we all want to hang on our wall, but we can't shoot it because that's a breeder. We call them the breeder. We leave the breeders alone.
It's responsible. It's ethical. And I mean, I grew up with hunters too. And I personally am not a hunter. It's not my thing, but my uncles have all done it. I've cooked bear and deer before and all that stuff. There's an ethical responsibility in there,
absolutely,
to do it appropriately. So I think that's pretty neat, because I didn't know you had that side of it until Nikki mentioned it, and I went, "Oh, really?" And that's pretty cool. That we enjoy to do that. Yeah. How many people do you take out at a time, roughly?
12. We have 12 hunters come up on Friday and then leave on Sundays.
And it's monthly?
No, it's 2 hunts, one in December and one in January.
Oh, okay. And then Float a Soldier is June, July, August.
Correct.
So 5 months out of the year you're doing.
Right. So the lake events, June, July, August, hunting events, November or December, January.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool.
And we get also, for the hunters, you have the you got your license that you have to tag your deer with and whatnot. Right. Well, Parks and Wildlife, they give us tags that we can use, and it depends upon what is our goal on culling, how many deer are we trying to get rid of. That's how many they want us to get rid of, 100 deer through, our hunts. Then we get 100 tags that we get to use. So you're not using your personal tags. That's
cool. That's good information, though, especially if people are kind of wanting to do their own hunting on their own time. They still have the ability to do this. But they still have to have their own license. I mean,
right. You have to have your hunting license in Texas to hunt anything except hogs. That's when because hogs have now become they're overrunning. You can just
go out and shoot a hog.
Yes.
They're overrunning.
But they're good eating. They're good eating. I eat a lot of hogs off of the ranch that we have down south. So they're delicious.
All right. Well, what else? You have any last words of advice? Because we had a good conversation. We always do.
Yes,
we always have good
Yes, we do. I think really just anybody out there that's considering starting up a nonprofit, make sure your heart is really in it. This isn't something that you're looking to do to make money, because you're not going to make money. You might make some money, but your paycheck is in the fulfillment that you get out of doing what you are doing. Right. With us at OFIS, those of us who volunteer, it's the smiles at the end of the day, the hugs that we get from the adults and the children alike. That's what we do this for. So make sure that your motive is in the right place before you start this, because if it's not, you're probably going to fail.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are believers, pray about it. Those of you who are not, seek really wise counsel.
Right.
I guess, just make sure that before you don't just jump into this 2 feet with not having done your due diligence and research, because there's quite a bit to it. And if you want it to succeed, you need to be aware of all of that before you jump in.
Yeah, that's sage advice. Sage advice. All right, Wes, I think we're going to wrap it up. Jay loves to do quotes. I mean, Jay, right? He can pull a quote out of thin air. So in honor of our sick guy that's down probably on his couch right now, catching a nap, this is a quote. And it's actually Martin Luther King. And this always comes into my head when I think of volunteering and nonprofits. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Right. So I tell my kids all the time, hey, when you're having a down day, go do something nice for someone else, because I can guarantee you there is somebody that's having a worse day than you are. Right.
Absolutely.
So on that note, Wes, I thank you so much for the conversation. It was great, awesome. Donna. It was great. It was just like when we had breakfast. We chatted and chatted. So
yeah,
so
that was
for
the longest
everybody,
breakfast I've had.
So go ahead.
That was the longest breakfast I've had in a long time. When me and you had breakfast.
That
it was great.
Taco went for a long hour.
Yeah, it did.
So everybody, from Beyond the Front Line and from Coming Home Well, we want to thank all our listeners for listening to us. If you're thinking of a nonprofit, Wes gave sage advice. He has an awesome nonprofit. If you're here in the greater San Antonio area, Canyon Lake, New Braunfels, all that, and you want to volunteer, I will have their website on our summary on the podcast. Go look them up. You cannot go wrong. It is a bunch of fun. We had so much fun. So listen, share, engage with us. We want to hear your thoughts. And from everybody on our side to everybody on your side, we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye now.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Front Line, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Follow us on Instagram at ComingHomeWell_BTS or on Twitter at ComingHomeWell. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.